Okay, so today, slightly different interview. I'm going to be talking to Andy here, Andy Young, who probably has had the shortest teaching career of anybody I've interviewed so far, and possibly will do in the course of these interviews. So, Andy, can you tell us exactly how long did you teach for?
I taught for my time during my teacher training at university, and then I left before I even started sort of professional teaching, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, did you do a PGCE or a BEd?
A BA QTS.
Right. Okay. So you did all your teaching practices, everything. How did you feel about it?
So I got into teaching basically when I wanted to go to university. My original thought was to go into physiotherapy, and I did some sort of trials, sort of volunteering at the local physio, and I realised that sort of dealing with knees and shoulders every day was a bit tedious and repetitive. So I wanted something that was a bit different and would change every single day. And I had done coaching before with children at my local rugby team, and so I thought, well, why don't I try going into a primary school and seeing if that helps? And so I went into a local primary school in the area close to me, and absolutely loved it. Loved the way that the kids interacted. Loved how you could just take one small thing and then run with it. Yeah, it was awesome. So I went, right, well, I'll do primary school teaching. So I ended up going into doing teaching at university. Did all of my assignments, did all of my training, and came out with a 2-1, which I was really, really happy with. And had the opportunity to work in a local school as well, but decided to turn it down. And yeah, that's kind of sort of how my journey started away from teaching without even going into teaching. So
Right. So what was it? Do you think was there a particular I mean, without dwelling too much on negativity, was there a particular thing that made you think, actually, no, I'm not cut out for this? Or was it a general sense?
it was a moment, more than anything. So it was in my third year. I was in a school, really lovely school, and it was a mixed class of 3 and 4, I think it was. Was it 3 and 4 or 2 and 3? 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, I can't remember. And there was one child in the class who came in. It was year 2. There was one child that came into the class, and he could barely write his own name. And by the end of the year, he was writing a paragraph. And so the improvement seen from him was absolutely exceptional. But the thing I just couldn't get my head around was the fact that he was still judged as underachieving or not achieving the target. That to me just didn't sit right. This person has gone from writing a single word not well to writing a full paragraph. I mean, that's not underachieving to me. That's being exemplary. So it was, yeah, that was the point at which I went, is there something wrong with the way that we are actually dealing with teaching and how we actually teach our children going forward?
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that. The whole target things and how, yeah, essentially kids are just treated as data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that must have been a bit gutting, to use quite a blunt word about it, to have thought that you had this career stretching out before you that was going to be exciting and different every day, which it obviously it would have been. Um, so how did you then go about thinking what you would then do after you're clutching your 2-1 in being a teacher, and then suddenly you're not going to be a teacher? So how did you go through the process of choosing what to move on to?
It was strange, really. I mean, there was never a doubt in my mind, but I would go into teaching. So I just always thought, well, I'll go into this.
Yeah.
And it was a single email that someone had sent, and it basically said you'd been nominated. And I went, what's this? So anyway, I met up with the person that had nominated me for this position, which ended up being the role that I got after university, which was working for the university's student union, and being the vice president. So I ended up being the vice president of the university for 2 years. It was absolutely amazing. I had the best time possible. But the big change was when they said, well, do you want to give this a go? And I was kind of falling slightly out of love with teaching. I was putting in so many extra hours than I'd realized, like, and unlike other student professions, it's fair enough, you've got the junior doctors, you've got the nurses, people like that, they get paid. As a BA QTS student, you don't get paid at all. And when you're in your final sort of year of training, of teaching, you're doing maybe 40, 50, 60-hour weeks sometimes. And people don't actually realize how difficult it is, because when you're fully qualified, you can sometimes go, oh, well, I've got a lesson plan from last year to do that. But as a student, you're generating everything as brand new. And yeah, all right, you've got templates and stuff like that, but a template's never going to teach a class, and it's not going to bring in your own perspective, is it? So for me, it was that one email that I got, and I said, right, you know what? Why not? I'll give it a go and see. And I ended up running in the election, and I ended up winning. And it was kind of, that was the point at which I went, right, well, I'm going to try this and see how it goes.
Right. So you had, did you say 2 years of that?
Yeah, I did 2 years of that, yeah.
And then do you think that any of the skills and mindset that had pushed you towards teaching in the first place were transferable into doing that?
Massively, massively. I think what the main thing for me was standing in front of people and actually speaking. So one of the things that I had to do was sort of do graduation talks and things like this. So when people were graduating, I spoke in front of a full room of about 2,000 or 3,000 people sometimes. And so to go from teaching, there is nothing scarier than teaching 30 year 6 children. There really isn't. And so to go from that to then having 3,000 grown-ups that are just happy that they've graduated is quite easy. So that sort of public speaking side of things was really useful. I found it also interesting that, you had to speak, the way you speak at different levels when you teach really helped going forwards, because if you've got, even at universities, you have university students who struggle with English as a first language, who might have severe learning difficulties, or might have sort of really severe mental health problems, that you have to then level conversations differently, like you would with primary school children. So that was a real skill set and a real sort of useful tool for me to take forward.
Okay, so then where did you go after that?
So I then went to, after I'd finished obviously at the universities being vice president, I then went to an amazing company who bring over international students. So I kind of took a little step back, not really teaching, but it was kind of a mix of both. And I worked as a centre director, teaching international students who'd come over to the UK, and they were coming from places like Israel, Brazil, China, Argentina, Italy, France, over to the UK, and they were learning English through sport and through tourism. So I worked in Bath, I worked in Cambridge, and I worked in Berkshire for quite a few months, looking after about 4,000 or 5,000 students that came over, organising tours to London, organising tours to Stonehenge. But at the same time, we also taught them how to do sport and how to learn through things like rugby and football, and also do lessons. So we worked with sort of foreign language teachers and people who just taught English. And that's a lot of my friends did that actually when they left the teaching. When they left university, they went abroad to teach in sort of international schools. So those sort of qualifications were the people we looked for the teachers that then taught our international students.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So I didn't realize that kind of thing existed. So it's a good way of, still putting your teaching skills to use, but without that
Absolutely.
accountability structure.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the children we dealt with were between 6 and 18. So it was a huge age range. And you know, being the centre director was, I was the top of the sort of order, if that makes sense, of people there. So if a child came to me, I had to be the person that was the disciplinarian. So having a teaching background really helped with that, and sort of, you know, if there was a difficult situation or anything, I was able to sort of get through that with the training that I'd learned at university, which was, you know, very, very useful.
Yeah. And what you're doing now is very different. Tell us about how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, so I went from the company being centre director, and I went back into universities because I got offered a job back up north, and I said, "Oh, I'd love to do that. That'd be brilliant." So I went back up north and established sort of a new arm of a student union again. And what was interesting was I was at the local rugby club. I've played rugby for 22 years of my life. It's a massive part of my life. And there was a guy there called Mark, who said to me, "Andy, I've seen the way that you talk to everyone, doesn't matter of their age. You're really good at that. Do you fancy coming and working for me?" So I said, "Well, that'd be, yeah. What is it you do?" And he said, "Well, I work for WPA Healthcare. I'm a franchise owner, and we help people with private health insurance." So a complete and utter change to anything I was doing before.
But using your communication skills that you developed in those previous roles, and originally all the way back to your teacher training.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So presumably there was some training, courses, learning involved before he unleashed you on potential clients.
Yeah, massive amount. So it's about a month's worth of training, full on all the time. And that includes sort of a full week down at the head office of just doing full on immersed training on sort of the policies that you have to learn, you know, about tax, about the Financial Conduct Authority, about sort of the different sort of areas of finance you have to learn. So yeah, it was a complete and utter change, and it really was a shock to the system. But I hope I've started to sort of get into it now, and you know, I'm learning my trade, and I know what I'm doing now. And I think the ability to be able to just go, well, I'm going to try something completely new, was from the fact of that initial email I had when I left teaching. And so I knew, well, if I leave something completely, and I've done that before, if I don't like it, I've always had it in the back of my head. If I don't like something and I'm really, really struggling, I can always fall back on teaching. But I would not want that to happen. But it is there as a sort of safety net if absolutely necessary.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously this guy, your boss, he saw that you had the innate skills that he needed and the knowledge you could learn. But it was your communication skills and the soft skills that you picked up along the way that were what he was looking for. And you can just acquire the subject knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think with teaching as well. So I've always struggled with spellings and things like that. I'm slightly dyslexic, and so with that side of things, teaching for me was always about sort of helping those people that struggled the same way I did. But actually, all that training I did, and how the children actually helped me sometimes with spellings, and how sometimes I was absolutely terrified to write things on a whiteboard in case I got something spelt wrong. That confidence that I took from that and from what the children helped me with actually really helps me in my job now. Because if I send something out via email, you know, I have things that help me, obviously, and I read through stuff and double check it. But everyone always makes mistakes, and I mean, obviously, you help people with that as well. But from that side of things, you know, you sometimes miss things on email, and so if someone sends something back and says, "Oh, sorry, I don't understand," that would have mortified me sort of when I first started teaching. But now it's a bit like, oh, well, you know, I can try and have a bit of a joke with you and say, oh, sorry about that. You know, I meant this Friday afternoon or something like that. So yeah, that's I would say teaching massively helped me with that.
Yeah. And you're obviously not afraid of doing a complete 360 in your career, your professional life. So do you have a hankering? Is there anything in the back of your mind thinking, well, when I've done private health insurance thing for 5 years, 10 years, I might have a go at something else? Or
That's a good question. It completely depends. If you'd asked me when I'd left university, would I be in private health insurance in 2023? I'd have probably laughed at you. So I don't know. 5 or 10 years down the line, I mean, it's a long way away. I love what I'm doing at the moment. I really enjoy it. It's still about helping people, but in a completely different way. And I think that's realistically what my core belief is that how can I help? That's the main thing. And so, you know, from being a teacher, you're helping people develop. From being in universities, you're helping people with mental health, and you're helping people with understanding how they can grow as people. And then with private health insurance, you're helping people either, you know, provide healthcare faster and through, you know, sort of the private means, and also potentially helping people, you know, prevent them having an early death or anything like that. So, yeah.
yeah. I think, I mean, you're still, compared with some of us, nicely young, so you've still got quite an exciting journey ahead of you. But thank you for sharing the journey so far with us, Andy. I think it's interesting to see how somebody who's really, you know, you didn't teach for long, but how it still has in a lot of ways informed what you've gone on. And it's sort of, there's been these themes that have run through what you've done since then. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that with us today.
No, thank you very much, Melanie. I really, really enjoyed this. So thank you.